Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for another webinar session in the Change for Climate Lunchbox series. Today's session is the last in our spring series and will focus on the new waste management system in the city, including Edmonton's waste cart rollout and how reducing the amount of waste we produce can lower greenhouse gas emissions in the community. My name is Heather Wheelaker, and I'm here with my colleague, Karen Young. Both of us work in the Planning and Environment Services branch with the city. We're joined by 4 colleagues in Waste Services. Jana Lee and Sarah Wilmot will be presenting today, and Kristen Arnott and Michael Glazier are here to help to respond to questions. Just a note, this session will be recorded, and we are only recording the speaking and presentation slides. At this time, I wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory. We do this to create awareness and to remind ourselves that we are all treaty members, no matter where we are from or what language we speak. We acknowledge the diversity of Indigenous people and their ancestors who have marked this territory for centuries. So it is now my pleasure to introduce today's session speakers. Jana Lee is a project liaison for the cart rollout and will be telling us about Edmonton's new waste system, which involves sorting your waste and putting it out in carts for collection. Sarah Wilmot is the program manager for waste reduction and has been working for the past year to develop the city's first waste reduction roadmap. Sarah will be telling us about the roadmap and providing tips on how you can reduce some common kinds of waste at home. I will now turn it over to our presenters. Welcome, Jana and Sarah.
Thanks, Heather. Jana is just going to pull up our slides and we'll get started. So welcome everyone to today's talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions from household waste. Since Heather has already introduced us, we'll get right into today's presentation. We'll focus on a few topics, all connected by a theme of reducing and sorting your waste to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We'll start with a quick overview of the relationship between waste and climate, and then do a deep dive into the new waste collection system that's rolling out across the city. We'll then move on to the topic of waste reduction and close with some tips on reducing your waste at home. We'll take questions, as Heather said, through the Q&A tool throughout the presentation, and then we have some time at the end for more questions. So as we could see from the poll, and we sort of anticipated this, people don't always see the connection between garbage and climate change. But in fact, there are both direct and indirect links. On a direct basis, waste management activities account for about 3% of Canada's emissions. And that's made up of emissions from collection vehicles and emissions of methane that occur when organic waste, like food and yard waste, decompose in a landfill. Now, 3% may not sound like much compared to some other sectors, but if you draw the boundaries a little bit bigger and account for the emissions from the production, distribution, and retailing of products that eventually become waste, a much larger share of the emissions enter the picture. In the US, the Environmental Protection Agency found that as much as 42% of total US greenhouse gas emissions are associated with all of those processes, the production, processing, transportation, and disposal of commodities and food, many of which become waste. As such, reducing and diverting waste can be really important steps in greenhouse gas mitigation. So now you can see why it's important to prioritize efforts to reduce the amount of waste produced. And I just want to clarify that when we're talking about waste reduction, we mean reducing all kinds of waste, even things that can be recycled or composted. Reducing waste is the most powerful way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. On the diagram that's on our screen, the top 3 layers of the triangle are included in the scope of waste reduction, whereas recycling and composting are classified as diversion. And diversion is really better managing the waste that's already been generated. The city's focus has traditionally been on diversion, but thanks to our recently approved 25-year waste strategy and waste reduction roadmap, we have now a renewed focus on waste reduction. Waste reduction offers many benefits in addition to reduced greenhouse gas emissions, including reduced resource consumption, reduced costs for collecting, processing, and disposing of waste, and even some social benefits like the redistribution of items that are still useful. Waste reduction is really about eliminating unnecessary products and packaging and allowing necessary products to be used to their fullest extent. The work we're doing on waste reduction and to improve waste diversion is described in the city's 25-year waste strategy. We are now in the process of implementing a system to achieve 90% diversion from landfill, while also continuously reducing the amount of waste generated in Edmonton. The timeline presented here gives you an overview of the work involved in updating Edmonton's waste system. You'll see far on the left side that we're leading by example by introducing collection of recyclables and food scraps at city facilities. This started last September and is continuing to roll out this year. And we'll have some more details on that later in the presentation. Continuing to the right on the timeline, the Edmonton cart rollout is a very high profile project, and Jana will be providing many details on that shortly. Next along the timeline, the waste reduction roadmap describes how the city will work in partnership with other actors to reduce the amount of waste generated by residents, businesses, public institutions, and other organizations. It was approved just last month, and the actions will be implemented over the next 3 years. I'll be giving you more details on the roadmap towards the end of today's presentation. Moving along the timeline even further, we're in the process of planning to introduce food scraps collection at multi-unit properties such as condos and apartments. A business case is being presented to Utility Committee at the end of this month about that project. The last big piece of work we'll be doing is to get the non-residential sector, which we also call the ICI sector, which stands for institutional, commercial, and industrial. So we need to get them to also begin separating their waste into 3 streams to increase diversion. That part of our work will begin in earnest later this year. I'm now going to turn things over to Jana, who will teach you more about the cart rollout.
Thanks, Sarah, and hi, everyone. So Sarah's mentioned the approved 25-year waste strategy. And moving to an automated cart collection system and sorting our waste is really the first major deliverable under that strategy, because it's one of the ways that we can divert waste from going to landfill and all works towards a zero waste future. As you can imagine, the scale of this project is quite substantial. As of today, almost 60% of homes, so that's about 146,000 homes, have received their carts. And by end of August, 250,000 homes will have received and transitioned to cart collection service. I'd like to go over why the city is transitioning to carts. There are 3 main reasons. So by sorting your waste at home, we're able to divert an additional 7 to 11% of waste from landfill. As the participants have indicated in their poll, space in landfill is an important issue. So diverting waste from landfill extends the life of our landfill, which then helps reduce our environmental footprint. Secondly, automated collection is safer for collectors and is an industry standard these days. In fact, Edmonton's one of the last major cities to move to this type of system. And the reason why it's an industry standard is because it makes for more efficient collection and processing, which saves time, resources, and maintains stable utility rates. When we talk about automated collection, some people are like, what is that? So I've included a clip to show how the new system works. a mechanical arm grabs, lifts, tips, and setbacks your cart. So I'd like to go over what the new system includes, which is 4 streams of collection. The city will provide you with 1 food scraps cart and 1 food scraps pail to collect your food scraps in. This is shown by the green icons. This stream will be collected weekly in the spring, summer, and fall, and every 2 weeks in the winter. The city will also provide you with a garbage cart, as indicated by the black icon, which will be collected bi-weekly year-round. There's no change to our recycling collection, so it will continue to be collected in blue bags every week. Our 4th stream is seasonal yard waste collection, the orange icon, which will be collected twice in the spring and twice in the fall. Residents will also get a comprehensive information package with their carts, and I have parts of mine with me. So it includes a welcome booklet, a sorting guide. So this is what we call our what goes where poster, a map to show what distribution phase you're in and when your first week of collection is, and a collection calendar. So I don't have mine with me because it's on my fridge right now. And because the rollout is happening by phase, you can find out exactly when your carts will be delivered and when to start using them online at edmonton.ca/waste by calling 311 or downloading the WasteWise app. The website also has a browser version of the app, and it's been a great tool, and there's significant usage of it since the cart rollout. A lot of people have been curious about what the new changes are compared to the old. So this graphic is a side-by-side comparison of the old system, where waste was collected manually by hand, and the new system, where waste is collected using automated collection trucks. In addition to the 4 streams of collection I mentioned, we have added some services in the new system. They include 2 free clear bags of garbage dropped off at eco stations for the times that you might have excess waste, and also unlimited free yard waste drop off at eco stations, provided they are debagged or in paper bags. So in addition to the added streams of service, this kind of shows, so under the current system, the old system, we had about 104 pickups. But with these new streams of service, we actually have about 127 pickups with our new system. Now that we've gone over the system in general, I'd like to get more into sorting. So food scraps is a new program for Edmonton. And so here is a quick snapshot of what can go into your food scraps cart. Our education team also offers interactive workshops on how to sort your food scraps. But in terms of a few details on how to sort your food scraps, we know food is at its highest value when eaten, but there are times when you might have unavoidable food waste, like pits and peels, or times when you have food that you didn't get to in time and it's spoiled. So in these instances, you'd want to scrape these food scraps into your food scraps pail. You can choose to line your kitchen pail with certified compostable bags. We just ask that they are BPI or BNQ certified compostable. So there are logos at the bottom left of the screen to look for when you go to the store. Or you can use paper products like a newspaper to line it or a paper bag. Now, I do think it's important to note that if you're already composting at home, and Sarah's going to be talking about home composting later in this presentation, we want home composters to continue what they're doing. It's great, and we want you to keep it up. But this program is still useful for you because we can take anything that you might not want to compost at home. Things like meats, bones, animal products like dairy, or even loose dog waste. For emptying your kitchen pail into the green cart, you can do it whenever, at whatever frequency works best for you. And I do have a fun fact. For those residents that have already started using carts in the city, we've collected over 1,600 tons of food scraps. So these are food scraps that have been saved from the landfill through collecting them separately. Here is a quick snapshot of what goes in recycling. We also have sorting recycling workshops available online. As I mentioned, recycling hasn't changed, but I wanted to go over it quickly because we collect these blue bags every week, and you can continue setting out as much recycling as you want. So that includes paper, cardboard, plastic containers and bags, metal cans and trays, and glass bottles and jars. Interestingly, folks are curious about plastic products because it's actually one of the top WasteWise app searches. In fact, plastic bags, plastic packaging, and plastic containers are the top 3 searched items. These are mostly single-use items, and so it really ties into the waste reduction work that Sarah is doing, and we'll talk about later in this presentation. But the reason why collecting blue bags hasn't changed and will continue with hand collection of bagged recyclables is really to help encourage and educate residents to sort effectively and not impose any volume limits to recycling during the transition to garbage and food scraps carts. Moving on to garbage, here's a quick snapshot of what can go into your garbage cart. Things here are chip bags or anything that makes a crinkly sound, plastic wrap, kitty litter because of the clumping, and padded envelopes and bubble wrap, among other things. The garbage cart is for anything that doesn't go into your food scraps cart or cannot be recycled in the blue bag. You can choose to place your garbage loose or in black bags inside the garbage cart if you prefer. Of course, if you have any broken sharps or anything, do seal those up in a container so that they are not loose in the bottom of your cart. And ensure that your cart lid can close. We found that once you get used to sorting your waste into different streams, you'll find that the amount of garbage you produce actually goes down. Our final stream that is collected is yard waste. So here are some of the materials that would be accepted in yard waste collection. This is an example of what a yard waste could set out could look like during your seasonal yard waste collection. So yard waste is going to be collected twice in the spring and twice in the fall. And these collections are really meant for your large spring and fall cleanups when you have a lot of dead yard waste. Yard waste can go into paper bags, clear plastic bags, or bundles. And of course, you can also top up your green food scraps cart with yard waste as long as the lid still closes. Yard waste is collected on separate days than the rest of your waste. And by collecting yard waste separately, it means it doesn't have to enter our processing system and become waste at all. It's composted separately at an outdoor site. There's no volume limit on how much you can set out at the curb. And because it's collected on a separate day, this ensures that you have enough space to put out as much yard waste as you'd like. Yard waste, for example, is collected on Mondays, whereas your food scraps, your recycling, your garbage are collected between Tuesdays and Fridays. You can find your exact yard waste collection date on your collection calendar or by downloading the WasteWise app. And I do want to mention, going back to one of the added services we've included, Extra yard waste can, of course, be taken to the eco station for free, as long as it's debagged. If in plastic bags or in paper bags, it can be just put into the yard waste bin. So those are the 4 streams that represent our new collection services. I also want to take a moment to go over materials that need to be dropped off. Hazardous materials need special handling and can't be thrown into your garbage cart or your food scraps cart. These are some examples of the materials, but it includes paints, chemicals, electronics, and more. So for these items, please take them to an eco station. As well, any waste that is too large or bulky to fit into your garbage cart can also be dropped off at the eco station. This includes renovation materials, car seats, mattresses, and more. Some items do have a recycling fee, so be sure to check out our website for rates and more information. Of course, the city also has big bin events, which are starting up again. I just saw the schedule for them. And so these events are where you can take oversized waste to be disposed of and recycled for free. So this is an overview of the cart system. As I said, it's a big project in our approved strategy, but it's safer for collectors. And by sorting with carts and only picking up what fits into the carts, our hope is that we can play a more active role in our zero waste future and do better by our environment by making sure waste goes into the appropriate streams for responsible management and beneficial end use. There's only so much we can do with processing and diversion from landfill. So having 250,000 households sort waste into the right streams, start thinking about the amount they generate is really all part of our waste reduction journey. So before I pass it back to Sarah, she mentioned that the city is leading by example by setting up sorting stations at city facilities. So these stations are in both public areas and in back of house areas. And priority facilities include attractions like the zoo, parks, leisure centers, arenas, golf courses, and of course, City Hall. There's about 240 city-owned and operated facilities that will have sorting stations by the end of this year. We've rolled out to just over 100 so far. So next time you're out at a city site in public, look for a sorting station and be sure to use them. So with that, I'll pass it back to Sarah so she can speak more about waste reduction.
Thanks, Jana. I'm going to spend the next few minutes walking you through the city's first waste reduction roadmap, and then we'll switch gears and talk about some concrete things you can do to reduce waste at home. So the development of this roadmap has been my focus for the past year. The roadmap is an action-oriented plan that identifies programs, services, and regulations to be implemented over the next 3 years that will result in less waste being produced by both the residential and non-residential sectors. We sometimes refer to the roadmap as Roadmap 24, reflecting the timeline of the work. Roadmap 24 was developed in the context of all the changes being implemented as part of the 25-year waste strategy. That strategy, in turn, supports Edmonton's climate commitments and is a critical part of the big city move to be greener as we grow, as defined in the city plan. The goal of the waste reduction roadmap is to reduce the quantity of waste generated per person in Edmonton by 20% over the course of the 25-year waste strategy. And over the course of the next 3 years, like the duration of this roadmap, we're looking to have 0% growth in residential waste generation. This is in contrast to the rate of growth that we have seen historically. From 2017 to 2020, every person in Edmonton generated about 5 kilograms more of waste every year. So, that's quite a rapid rate of growth. We're not just producing lots of waste every year, it's more waste. So our goal is to first stop the growth in waste generation and then reverse the trend and start actually decreasing the amount of waste that is made. Reducing waste is an increasingly important global issue that municipalities alone cannot solve. And this really came home to me and Jana when we were working on the roadmap, that there's a limit to the direct action a municipality can take to reduce waste. It's easier for us to work in the realm of waste diversion, but waste reduction really requires strong collaboration and strong partnerships. So the city will work in collaboration with consumers, advocacy groups, non-governmental organizations, and other orders of government to incentivize and support the industry to be innovative and to rethink product composition and design to better reflect the value and scarcity of limited resources and the environmental impact of extracting them. As a result of the actions in the roadmap, Edmontonians will be supported in making behavioral and operational shifts necessary to reduce waste. We will identify barriers to zero waste innovation and try to remove them. And we will increase awareness of and participation in waste reduction programs. Roadmap 24 identifies 10 actions for the city to implement over the next 3 years. And given the length of this presentation today, we don't have time to go over all of the actions, but I would encourage you to go to edmonton.ca/waste reduction, where you can find a copy of the roadmap and read for details. So I am now going to switch gears as promised and talk about changes you can make in your daily habits at home to reduce waste. The first kind of waste we're going to talk about is food waste. Wasting food, I think, is something that none of us really like to do, and nobody is setting out to do it, but it does happen. As Jana said, food is best when eaten. So these tips are there to help you make the most of the food that you purchase or grow. Some of these tips might seem obvious when we write them out on a slide, but when you put them together, they really can make a difference. Another tip that's not on the slide, but that is really quite important too, is to understand the difference between best before dates and expiry dates. Best before dates are very much about food quality, and they are not about food safety. Expiration dates are only required on certain foods, such as meal replacements or nutritional supplements. After the expiration date, those specific kinds of food may not have the same nutritional content as declared on the label. So the next time you see an item of food in your fridge, perhaps, that has gone past its best before date, remember that doesn't automatically mean that it should go in your home compost or your food scraps cart, certainly not in your garbage. It may be just fine to eat. And so we would encourage you to use your best judgment there. The next slide talks about textile waste. And our focus on this slide is really on clothing, but I want to remind you too that textiles also include things like sheets and towels and curtains. Many times those items might be past their useful life in their original form, but are still good options for upcycling or turning into other products. In terms of textile waste, the main theme here is really to avoid falling victim to fast fashion and make sure that you're using your textiles to their full potential. And then we want to talk about single-use items. They do get a lot of attention, and it's well-deserved. They are quite easy to avoid with a bit of pre-planning and making some new habits. Last year, some retailers weren't accepting reusable items because of concerns about COVID. But since then, we have learned that reusable items are not a significant source of transmission. And in response, many local retailers have come up with ways to allow for reusable cups and mugs to be used safely and are now accepting reusable bags again. In the last couple of slides, I want to talk about the waste that we sometimes make outside in our yards. So throughout spring, summer, and fall, lots of people have to deal with grass, leaves, plants, branches, and other trimmings. There are easy ways to use these resources instead of throwing them out. You can use them as mulch and leave the clippings on the lawn. This actually makes your life easier than picking them up and bagging it and having to haul it out for collection or taking it to an eco station. You'll be reducing waste, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and it's actually good for your garden. By leaving these items in your garden, you're protecting the soil surface, you're absorbing and retaining moisture for your soil, feeding nutrients to your soil, reducing compaction, encouraging more life in the soil of the kind we want, but discouraging weeds. You're stabilizing soil pH and putting carbon in the soil. You can use almost anything for mulch: leaves, wood chips, straw, twigs, branches, and even plant trimmings. The other thing the city's been promoting for a number of years is going bagless. And that simply means leaving your grass clippings on your lawn. To do that successfully, let your grass stay a little bit longer and mow it more often. And then you will see the benefits for your lawn. Finally, and Jana spoke to this a little bit earlier too, it's important to keep home composting if you're already doing it. And we would encourage you to give it a try if you're not doing it yet. So even though the city is starting to collect food scraps, home composting is still one of the best ways to turn your food scraps into a valuable resource. Home composting avoids all of the energy, greenhouse gas emissions, and costs of collecting, sorting, and processing food scraps and yard waste, as well as the impacts of distributing and marketing the finished compost. Best of all, thanks to the new waste sorting system, we're already being asked to separate your food scraps. So once they're already separated, why not try a little bit of composting yourself at home? We encourage you to start with the easy stuff, which would be anything from a plant. Mix those things together with some dry brown material, such as leaves or wood chips. Balance that with some water and air. If you try that, use your food scraps carts for items that can be trickier to compost at home, like meat, bones, and cooked foods. There's also a website which is not listed on our slide, but maybe Karen can pop it into the chat. It's sharewaste.com. And on that website, you can find ways to work with a neighbor to compost together. You may have a neighbor who has a compost pile and is looking for more material, and you could take your things there. Or you may find that you start composting and wish you had more, and you could become a site to receive items from your neighbor. So we've covered a lot in this presentation, but if you want to learn more, we've got some resources on this slide for places to look. For the cart rollout, the best place to start would be the information package that comes with your carts. If you haven't received it yet, make sure you take a look when you do. We've also created some videos that can be found on edmonton.ca/waste for those of you who are really visual learners. You can also download the WasteWise app, which is a great way to learn what goes where. If an item isn't on the what goes where poster that comes with your package, you can search for it in the app and it will tell you where it goes. For more details, you can also sign up for an online workshop and the registration for those is available on our website. Workshops are done in small groups and really dive deep into our waste system. For waste reduction, visit our website, edmonton.ca/waste reduction, to learn more and to sign up for our updates, including a newsletter.
Well, thanks so much. And I think that's a really important point that you make. You spoke, Sarah, about how connected waste is to greenhouse gas emissions and reducing our emissions in the city. Jana, you spoke as well about the importance of sorting waste so that we're much more efficient in processing waste when it comes into the city. Thank you so very, very much. You've just shared an enormous amount of information for us, and I'm really grateful to you and your team for all of the information that you have online so that we can follow up or sign up for an additional waste session. So thanks so much. Thank you again, today's presenters, Jana Lee and Sarah Wilmot, for rolling out the Waste Card Initiative for us. And thank you to Kristen Arnott and Michael Glazier, working away in the background, also with Waste Services. You were helping out with the questions and answers, and we got quite a few of them. And I think that's really the value of these series, is seeing what are those questions that folks have. We appreciate the time and the effort that you made to present a Change for Climate Lunchbox session. So thanks, Sarah and Jana, and thank you, Karen Young, for handling all of the logistical pieces to make today and our entire series happen. And last but definitely not least, Thanks to our audience for spending this time with us today to learn the ins and outs of Edmonton's new and improved waste cart rollout. Have a terrific afternoon and a fabulous summer. Thanks, everyone.